So Amy, just before you arrived, we were talking about Black Lives Matter, and we were talking about Trans Lives Matter, and we were having this discussion about how all the subgroups are stepping forward, and Chris was concerned that we were splintering things to the point that we were diluting, like, who are we really talking about? Where are Black women in this equation? And I know that you, as a Black indigenous woman, you represent a lot of different groups, and I thought this is the perfect topic for Amy.
Can we clarify something? Because I just recently started seeing the term indigenous. And I think there are a lot of people watching who they may be hearing it for the first time. Can you?
So there is a lot of conversation around that. Some people do not want to be called Native American. They don't want to be called Indian. Obviously not Redskin either.
Why not Native Americans? I was taught that Native American is the PC
well, the
term.
fact is that the borders were placed on indigenous land. So we are not, it's like in Canada, they'll say First Nation. They have different groups within Aboriginal. So indigenous just means everybody who's indigenous to the land where they come from.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just a unifying term, in other words.
So because you do represent a lot of different groups, and so we were thinking about this idea of who is included, who's not included, and how do you leverage, you also being a journalist, you know how important messages are.
Yeah.
So when you think of Black Lives Matter, what do you think of?
Well, I mean, the point about unity is so important. I do feel that we should say Black Trans Lives Matter, just as we say Black Lives Matter, because we're not saying all lives matter, because we're specifically saying Black lives, because Black people are often not thought of when it comes to so many things. They're, you know, often at the bottom, unfortunately. So Black trans lives are lower than that.
At the bottom.
So that's why we have to keep centering the folks that are most in danger, essentially.
And
That's a
danger.
good perspective.
That is a great word.
Yeah.
So then I think when you bring it to the danger factor, this kind of goes to what Chris was saying, is while we see Black men being harmed for a show on television, if you will, almost to a sport, the same thing where Black women have been killed in front of cameras and not getting elevated to that same kind of national attention.
Totally.
And then I think you were suggesting that sort of jumping to Black trans lives. What about Black female lives?
Language means so much. So saying Black trans lives matter, Black women matter, all of that is so, so important.
So how do you identify?
Yeah, so I mean, I am Native American or indigenous, Black, and white. My dad is actually French Canadian and Scots Irish. And I speak fluent Spanish. That's very much a part of my identity. I'm queer, I'm femme.
Femme
I'm a lot.
meaning?
So it's a good question. A lot of people don't really understand what femme is.
I don't.
For
And I'm
me,
gay.
my femme is feminine. For some femmes, they're feminine in other ways, or it's just a very kind of fluid thing, like all identities are. But for me, I operate from a place of love, and I feel like that's a part of my femme. It's the divine feminine. It's a lot of those kinds of themes that stem from the concept of womanhood for me.
You look simply delicious.
There's something so important that people don't often focus on, which is the beauty, the magnificence of femininity. You know, for men, it's always it's attacked. You know, and obviously rooted in misogyny, but they're missing out on half of the world. You know, in terms of half of life, 50% of life is.
What do you mean by attacked exactly?
Femininity is a bad thing for a male.
I think that really resonates with you.
Femininity,
personally.
yes, it does resonate, because I've always embraced my femininity and I've always been attacked for it. And it's like,
I'm so sorry, I was just gonna say that I feel like when I wanna present myself and my gender in the way that I feel most comfortable, it's often like seen as trivial or, you know, lesser than. But if someone is more masculine of center and they want to present as masculine, we all celebrate it. You know, I don't understand, like there's sexism within the LGBTQ community.
Absolutely.
There's racism, there's transphobia, there's fat phobia. Let's just talk about that. That is a whole other
My
thing.
stomach, let me grab the roll of fat right here and own it.
Own it.
Yes.
I wish it could go away, but I never hear the voices say you work out every day. I only hear the voices say you got fat around your stomach. So let's,
Well, my
grab it,
whole
girl.
self-love journey
Grab it.
really began when I embraced everything that I am. And that's not just my size, my body, my fat rolls, my cellulite. That's my gender expression, my sexual orientation. And I just really started loving myself as I am. And I honestly feel like I have so much more confidence now, 50 pounds heavier, than when I began.
Repeat that for the people
I
in
have
the
more
back.
confidence now, 50 pounds heavier, than when I was smaller.
That's a very powerful statement.
It is
You
so
know what?
powerful. You said it earlier, and the way you said it was slightly different. You said, I didn't truly love myself until I gained 50 pounds.
Yeah.
So many people
Facts.
gain weight, and then it's like it lowers their self-esteem.
Speaking of that, what motivated you to this level of confidence in the skin that you're in and being able to embrace each little nugget just enough to be able to use it as part of how you create your own brand? Because I think so many of the young people in our culture, they struggle with, how do I embrace my difference? How do I embrace my uniqueness and not feel like in some way it separates me, but it actually empowers me as a version of this whole?
So the truth is that I'm a unicorn. I can't help but be different, you know, and I don't say that from ego. I say that from a humble place. And actually it's sometimes frustrating because I'll go into my own community and I feel like a visitor because I'm not seen as enough of that one thing. You know, I feel like
You're too white.
yeah,
You're too
being
this.
mixed race and having all these different identities is a struggle, you know? And the fact of the matter is white supremacy is the reason why we have things like blood quantum and colorism.
What is blood quantum?
Explain that.
So blood quantum is a thing that affects indigenous folks. The US government will say that to be a member of a certain tribe, you have to be this percentage of that nation. The interesting thing about being Native American specifically is that our government, or it's like my identity is not just ethnically Chickahominy, but we're also a federally recognized nation, which means that I'm a member of a sovereign nation. So it's like another country, essentially. So individual countries or sovereign nations are allowed to determine what a citizen is, you know? So are you 50%? Are you 25%? Like, what is the cutoff point? That's blood quantum. But back in the day, we didn't have that. Now people are like just clawing at resources and they don't want to let other folks in, so they deny other people of their ethnicity.